The second area of the kidney we're interested in is the adrenal medulla. And the adrenal medulla is essentially a post-ganglionic structure. It's innervated by a preganglionic neuron that releases acetylcholine onto nicotinic receptors, and then this stimulates these chromaffin cells to degranulate. And in the granules you have catecholamines, both epinephrine and norepinephrine, ATP and other neuropeptides that confer the signals of the 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 adrenal medulla. So it's essentially innervated by the sympathetic system, and it results in a systemic response to sympathetic activation. This slide shows the creation of catecholamines. They're derived from tyrosine, and every step here requires an enzyme. So we go from tyrosine to dihydroxyphenylalanine to dopamine, and then dopamine to norepinephrine, and then finally from norepinephrine to epinephrine via this enzyme phenylethanolamine N-methyltransferase, which is stimulated by cortisol. And so we can see here how cortisol release enhances sympathetic tone by increasing the concentration of epinephrine in the granules. Epinephrine generally circulates at a lower level than norepinephrine, but upon stimulation of the adrenal gland, that's going to change. The properties of the catecholamines are shown in here. They're secreted by the adrenal medulla via the chromaffin cells. It's an amine hormone, and that means it's soluble, and so it is freely transported, dissolved in the plasma, but some of it might bind to albumin. It's stimulated for release by sympathetic preganglionic neurons, and it's metabolized by monoamine oxidase, and the degradation products are excreted by the kidney. And the half-life of these catecholamines are very short. They act by binding to adrenergic receptors in the cell membrane, and their response is highly varied depending on the particular cell that is responding. It's involved in vasotone, arterial tone, causing vasoconstriction, but the aspects that we are going to be talking about mainly in this block are its metabolic effects. So stress causes the release of the catecholamines from the adrenal gland. These can be hypovolemia, hypoglycemia, or hypothermia. But trauma, anxiety, and pain also stimulate the release. And you can think of the two different catecholamines in two different ways. So epinephrine is released into the blood, and so it's kind of more endocrine and acts on distant target cells and creates a total systemic sympathetic response, whereas norepinephrine is more tailored to specific sites of release. And so the effects of these then, for instance, in the case of hypovolemia, it's going to cause vasoconstriction, increase your heart rate, and generally try and increase the volume of your circulatory system. In hypoglycemia, most relevant for this short lecture, it increases lipolysis, glycogenolysis in the liver and muscle, glucagon secretion, gluconeogenesis, and inhibition of insulin secretion. So it's going to raise blood glucose levels. And then in hypothermia, again, it's going to cause vasoconstriction to the periphery to maintain heat in the important organs. It will increase your heat production by causing you to shiver and facilitate facilitating thermogenesis, and it will also increase your metabolic rate. And these are just another table of things that enhance the release of catecholamines. So the metabolic actions of catecholamines are shown here. It breaks down glycogen into glucose. It will break down glycogen in the muscle so that it can be used. Obviously, the muscle cannot pass out glycogen or glucose, and so what comes out of the muscle then is lactic acid as it's used by the muscle for its function. It will cause lipolysis that then breaks down the triglycerides into free fatty acids, and then these are converted into keto acids in the liver. And it will inhibit the effects of insulin on both muscle and adipose tissue, preventing the uptake into these tissues. Another aspect of the release of the catecholamines is that it increases the release of glucagon, which, as we'll see in the glucagon lecture, reinforces activity because they both have similar effects on lipolysis and glycogenolysis, and it inhibits the release of insulin. So it's all about mobilizing substrate and getting your energy levels up, getting your blood sugar levels up, so you can deal with the stressful situation that you're currently under. If you have excess epinephrine or norepinephrine, we've all felt the symptoms of nervousness or excitability, sustained hypertension, sweating, palpitations, hyperglycemia, and it's such a powerful stimulant that if it's released enough, you can create enough blood glucose that it overcomes your kidney functions and you get glucose in your urine. And then the lack of epinephrine is orthostatic hypertension because your vasculature doesn't hold tone.